I believe
do we have to record?
Chris, you want to provide it?
We have to, but it doesn't. It looked like we were at the beginning, but I'm not sure. Is it, Chris?
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Only it shows in the corner.
It is being recorded to my own computer, and it's being streamed to YouTube right now.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, Josh, let's go ahead and kick it off with the mission moment.
To an audience of millions of people watching tonight. Here we go. So mission moment tonight. So the class of 2021 has been busy applying to college. This is our second cohort. So busy, exciting, tension, anxiety. It's also a very different kind of experience for kids working with their counselors fully remotely in this process. So tonight I want to share for the mission moment an essay that one of our students wrote that I think is pretty solid and reflects, I think, some of the ways in which the school has impacted her approach to college and her experience in school. So here we go. We believe that your child is not currently performing at the level needed to meet the requirements for promotion.
I agree.
To graduate on time. I was in the gymnasium when I heard the sentence. It was part of a letter for summer academy I received toward the end of my sophomore year. I felt hopeless and defeated. My freshman and sophomore years, I didn't take school seriously. I wasn't completing assignments on time, didn't do most homework, and was distracted easily in class. In most classes, I would daydream or sneak my phone under the desk. Meanwhile, my classmates were focused on getting their work done and earning high grades. My parents told me to put my work first. I had a support system that encouraged me to perform well in school, but at the time, I didn't have motivation. I knew deep down I wanted to find it, but the seriousness of high school didn't click for me. I didn't realize that not taking my schoolwork seriously could later limit my choices. Junior year was a turning point for me. I was in the counselor's office one day in November watching seniors as they excitedly applied to colleges. I admired the way one of the counselors was calling colleges advocating for her students. As I heard her making positive comments about other students, I wondered if she would do the same for me. Up to that point, my time in high school didn't speak well for me. I'd always heard about students getting into college. I knew it was possible, but I never actually saw it in front of me. Seeing the upperclassmen being granted admission to their dream colleges and seeing my counselor advocating for them made me realize how badly I wanted the same for myself. After she got off the phone, I spoke to her about what I could do to improve my chances in the college application process. The conversation we had motivated me to change. My newfound maturity made me see things differently. I looked at my current grades. The F stood out more than before. My counselor and I set realistic goals, including getting my overall GPA to at least a 2.0. We also identified teachers I could ask to redo assignments for higher grades. Finally, we highlighted colleges I could apply to if I reached my goals. The next day, I changed everything up about my academic behaviors, my mindset, my habits, my discipline. I submitted missing assignments and asked to redo tasks that I received a low grade on, if not for credit, then to master the content. I spent more time in the counselor's office during lunch and after school doing homework. I met weekly with my counselor to talk about my progress and to ensure I was meeting my goals. I developed organizational skills to ensure I met all of my deadlines. I checked my grades daily to make sure they stayed strong. I communicated more with my teachers when I needed help, and I demonstrated discipline throughout the sudden switch to virtual learning by staying focused on my work, despite the difficult circumstances we all faced. My ambition to go to college drove me to become a more accountable and disciplined person. I want to go to college. I want to expand my knowledge, and I want to be exposed to new things, meet new people, and continue to explore areas of study that I'm passionate about, like computer science and economics. I didn't start off high school well, but I found my motivation. The self-awareness I've developed, desire for feedback, and my passion for learning and growing is what will continue to facilitate my success to and through my college experience into my career.
What grade was she?
So she's now in the 12th grade. She will be a first-generation college-going student. She's grown, as she said in her statement. Like, she has not always been a great student and has shown really great progress over the past year and a half. So she found out this week she got accepted into 3 schools. She is now weighing SUNY Brockport, SUNY Buffalo State, and SUNY Fredonia, I believe, and then is waiting for 3 or 4 other schools to come in later this month. When I asked her which school she was leaning towards, she said she's going to wait. She doesn't know yet. She's going to figure out what options she has on the table after she hears from all of her schools. So proud of her, happy for her. Her family is too. And I think what's nice is that she mentioned that, like, her interactions, her experiences in school had an impact on the way in which she sort of saw herself continuing on. And so I'm proud. So you should be too.
Well, what's the context in which she wrote this, Josh?
This is very likely for a SUNY application, or perhaps for the common application.
Okay.
And so she would have written this fall. I actually asked her if she were interested in perhaps recording her reading this tonight for you all, and she declined. A couple of reasons, but she was weighing that option. And so she would have gotten some help with this from others. I know there were some volunteers earlier this year, such as Sal, who spent some time with our seniors helping them kind of craft their essays, make stronger sense of it. And obviously our college counseling team of 2 was very much involved. So.
Yeah, it was well written.
Yeah.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, she's got good options. We spoke today for a bit, and the sort of the focus now is we've got 6 more months. Let's finish strong here. Let's make it happen. So yeah, that's the mission moment for today.
Great. Okay, thanks, Josh. Let's see. You want to give your head of school report?
Sure thing. So if you all have that open, the major headline here is that we're heading into December. We're 4 months in. Much of what we considered, devised, envisioned as of the summer has come to fruition. So we've delivered on much of what we wanted to do from the start. Proud of that. It's been not the easiest work all of the time, but things have gone well for us overall. And when saying that, I think about, first and foremost, health and safety of school. We haven't had a serious incident safety-wise at the school since the beginning of the year. And so I think our decisions up front have contributed to that. In addition, like, our kids have experienced uninterrupted daily FaceTime virtually with their teachers, each and every one of them. I go back to a comment that Jim made last spring about, like, the value and importance of kind of routine, and having kind of like something that is secure, something that you kind of know is coming your way. And I think kids have benefited from that routine that we provided. And I think it shows. Overall, we're going to talk about grades momentarily, but based on grades, based on some of the other evidence that we have related to some assessments in ELA and math, at least as of now, a vast majority of our kids are succeeding and doing just fine in school, given what we're providing right now. So that feels great. And at the same time, like any other year, there are kids that we're worried about and want to do more for and provide for. And so this is different because we're remote. And so some of the factors at play that might cause kids to struggle are different, perhaps more pronounced. But that work kind of continues for us overall. And so that's where we've been focusing a vast majority of our discussions, our debate, our time over the past month and a half, is thinking about, that 25% of kids right now who perhaps with more support and kind of better work on our end might be showing more progress and more success in school. So I think that's the general headline of where we are. Not all that different from last month. It's just now we're continuing with some of the initiatives that we set forth at around the mid-October mark, when we begin to see some trends about who is doing well, who's not, and what we might be doing better with. And so in the dashboard, I guess they're related to that major headline. We'll focus on some academics here. If you look at first term grades. And I spoke about this with the SLC for quite some time last Wednesday, but you'll see grades for the first term across both sites. They're not significantly different than in prior years with regard to distribution. A majority of our kids are doing well across the 4 content areas. And then there's some kids that are also struggling. And so I've provided kind of pass rates across the major disciplines there, and have also provided fail rates. And fail rates look at the number of kids who are failing different courses, where a 70% is our threshold at Unity. But you'll see that we do have some kids that we need to continue to figure out better ways of supporting them. Some of that is academic and what's happening in the classroom and the way in which we're engaging all of our kids, our students with disabilities, our kids that are doing quite well, and perhaps in some cases better than how they were doing in person. And some of it relates to attendance and just like kids being in school consistently each and every day, each period. And so I've listed out on page 3 some of the interventions or actions that we're taking now to improve student learning with that 25%, with that quarter in mind of kids. I'm excited about the conferencing that took place at the high school last month. That was really well structured by a good team with kind of like clear goals, clear interactions and conversation about supports and possibilities. And so I'm excited to see sort of where that goes and the impact that might have on kids and our support of them. And so that's in the mix. There are a number of other things happening, things that are not listed here that we're trying new, that are even kind of more fresh. Is we're devising for a small number of kids a check-in, check-out system with our dean of students, where there are goals set with kids. This is mainly with kids who are not attending class over the course of an entire day. There are goals set in the morning with that dean. There's a good relationship with that dean and that number of students. There are goals set for the day, and then at the end of the day, there's a checkout. And this is virtual. So this is like you and I talking now, where there's like, hey, how'd your day go? What went well with your day? What are we thinking about for tomorrow? What homework do you have tonight? It's that kind of interaction, that kind of conversation, that sort of relationship building that's happening. So that's one initiative, small number of students, but could have an impact. And the other is just in the way in which we as a leadership team are walking through classes each day, and at the middle school and high school, making that more rigorous and more purposeful across the different stakeholders who are taking part. And so right now we've got coaches, principals, myself, and deans sort of doing that work over the course of a schedule each week. Our work right now is in thinking about those classrooms that with that collective team supporting both teacher, planning, and individual students in that class that have known the struggle, like that collaboration across the board, like being yet another way in which we're looking to create better experiences in classrooms that we identify, more so. So with attendance, there is a fairly significant overlap between struggle academically and kids not being in every class over the course of the day, or a vast majority. And so we've touted high attendance. I think we've used the same sort of numbers that the city has used and other schools use. And so on like a binary basis of kids showing up at all over the course of the day, we've got very strong attendance of 95, 96%. As we do a deeper dive and look at kind of individual periods, and we do now and have been taking period by period attendance, the numbers aren't so high. And so you see that on the bottom of page 3 in looking at the percentages of students that have a strong binary daily attendance rate versus those that are kind of by period, the daily attendance. So there's about a percentage point spread between the two. And what that essentially means is that we do have kids that might be logging on for fewer than 80% of classes each day. So maybe midday, they might be missing 2 classes, or first period, they're not there, last period, they're not there. And so one of the ways in which we've been combating that now and supporting stronger attendance is by looking more granularly at that partial attendance data and identifying those kids that are struggling academically because they're missing these classes, and then providing supports and taking some steps to help them be in class, be excited about class, and also provide some incentives for them. So a lot of this comes down to like engagement of classroom. And so there has been some trainings that we've been doing at both sites for teachers and leaders around strategies remotely for kind of getting kids who might not be as in tune with virtual instruction and virtual sort of classrooms to be so. And some of that comes down to technology we're using. Some of that comes down to like the topics we're discussing. And some of that comes down to like question techniques and the way in which you question all using the technology in front of you. So I think across classrooms, there are lots of good ideas here and there. And so for us as kind of the leadership team, it's about the sharing of that and then the promotion and encouragement and accountability of using that. So that being probably the key measure that's going to have the greatest impact, like the degree to which class is super cool for kids and kids want to come. I'm going to talk about graduation. Let me pause there for a moment. Are there kind of questions around grades in the first term at middle school, high school, attendance, and perhaps their interaction?
How do you, I'm sorry, this is a dumb question. The binary daily attendance rate, is that just like taken once a day randomly or twice?
So if a student is in attendance for any period in which attendance is taken, they're present
just in
according
general.
to that level. Yeah.
It could be. Okay.
And that's generally the value you're kind of seeing across the city. So when the DOE says that as of October, we had an attendance rate of 85% or 82%, depending on what they're using. They're talking about that kind of measure. If you hear of another charter school saying we've got attendance of 98%, they're using the same sort of like binary kind of like, did a kid show up at all? Schools might not be taking attendance by period, and so they don't have the ability to kind of look at things by period.
Does attendance affect the reimbursement rates?
It does, not with these measures though. So so if 70% of our kids are showing up to fewer than 5 of their 6 classes, that does not impact our reimbursement rate. If you've got kids who are chronically not in school and then questionably enrolled, then it does. And that is reflected in the enrollment table that we might look at in a little while as we look at the dashboard.
Got it. So it's in its totality. I remember when I was in high school and I became whatever age it is, you can sign yourself out, say I'm sick today, and sign yourself out and go home. They said, no, don't. We lose money every time you do that. So that's not the case here. This is in the totality is the legitimately enrolled. Okay.
I think what's also sort of fascinating here is just I mean we've always, I mean, in schools there's always an engagement kind of challenge for educators and leaders. And so if we were in school and you guys came and visited today, we might go into some classrooms and there's going to be a good number of students where you're like, I don't know if they're kind of into this class, or this class is super boring right now. And I imagine a lot of students are not totally into it. And so just in the setting we're in now, kids can disengage by simply not logging in. It's an easier sort of off-on switch. And so in some cases, it's a cleaner measure of like, are kids into our school, into our classes or not? Like which classes are super exciting, which perhaps are not.
Is it the same? Is it the same recurring classes that are having issues, the same teachers, or is it?
Some of that is there. I mean, we're finding some of the same trends exist that you might see with in-person learning, where first period, the attendance isn't quite as high. It's like 82% versus other periods of the day. And then the last period tends to be a bit lower. So students might be not getting up in time to make that first class or just not ready, prepared for that first class. And then students may be kind of tired after 6 hours of remote learning and being on Zoom, as we all are, too. So they may not log in last period.
This might be my ignorance and everybody else may know the answer, but the same way you organize school visits, is there any way for us to kind of log into classes and see what's happening?
Yeah. So y'all get to see a clip last month of a sixth grade DLA teacher. I want to invite y'all to take part in the walkthroughs. So I think we do that in January. They're good. I'm like pleased. And for those who took part, I think I may have mentioned this on Wednesday, but during the SLC call, for those who took part in some of the in-person walkthroughs we did last year before, these are similar in some ways. They're easier. because you can kind of just get into a class right away and not worry about like where do you stand, is there a room, is there a desk, are you knocking something over, all that stuff. You just kind of get in and you see very purely like teacher, students, and content, and the way in which all that's interacting at once. So it's cool. And then I think some of the ways in which we're debriefing on that as an observing team and coming back, I think is building is a product and is better than what we did in prior years, in thinking about, okay, this is what we saw, we need to highlight this and like showcase it because it's awesome, or hey, this is a concern, what's the clear next step for us addressing this so that like outcomes for kids improve. So yeah, January.
Okay, sounds good.
One just, I don't know, so you say the pass rates, you got these two tables, bottom of page 2, top of page 3, pass rates, fail rates. You say the pass rates are in line with last year. Presumably that would imply the fail rates are also in line with last year. Is that true?
Not terribly off. I think it's not significantly. My sense is like in a given year, we may have 15 to 20% of kids failing 3 or more classes. So we do have more students that are kind of at that kind of extreme, not engaging in school front than we have had in the past. And that's a result of attendance. So we are seeing more of that. There is an uptick of that in comparison to in person.
And just for that cohort, would that attendance issue have been similar last year as it is this year in terms of them showing up late to first period, taking off earlier, or just not showing up? Is it?
Yeah, we have lower attendance or present rates first period.
Got it.
Not as much last period. I mean, kids aren't able to kind of jet from school early as easily as they might just not dial in after lunch to classes.
Yeah.
I assume your sense is that this is going to get fixed when you offer some of these kids the ability, or at least in large part.
Yeah. So with the Panther pods, which just as an update, a lot has happened since the last time we met. The last time we met, like we kind of know who the next president was going to be, but weren't quite sure. Thanksgiving hadn't happened, and we were also like the DOE also didn't go off for a while and then come back. So it seems like a while, but it's only been about 3.5 weeks or something like that. With the pods, we put that on pause when the DOE went off, and then decided in the end that it was best to sort of run this when we get back from the break in January. So those pods will continue then. They're going to be small in their initial sort of start. We're talking about maybe 10 to 20 students per site coming in person. And those are kids of families that have opted in, this is optional, where we may have encouraged families because of there being some struggle to come in and take advantage of this. And so there are preferences in play there. But I assume like we will see improvements as a result of that intervention. If we don't, we shouldn't do it. But the idea of like kids being present in a safe, structured space and not interrupted by perhaps a lack of having that at home, I think should benefit the number of students who take part.
Yeah, and so far, when you've reached out to families and said, your kid is struggling here, their attendance is low, whatever, would you consider sending them in person? What kind of response have you been getting?
We put things on pause, and when we did have a couple of families that we've then reached out to and said we're gonna continue this in January now, and we have to kind of re-engage them in interesting conversation. And so I'm trying to sort of understand whether like some of the non-responses we've gotten recently from families who were going to engage initially when we began the program, whether that's about just re-engaging them in the importance of this, or whether it's about some new fear or uncertainty about the state of the pandemic. And I'm not sure. I think in any case, we've got capacity for about 20 students per site, and we should be able to identify students who would both benefit from that and families that are feeling good about it as an option for them. So that's where things currently stand. Any other questions on attendance, absenteeism, grades, and actions in play?
I just have a related question. Do you have a sense of when teachers are going to get vaccinated?
No, I don't. I mean, I read probably the same articles that you have.
Yeah, I know.
And
I just didn't
there's
know
been
if like the
various
DOE
opinions,
or somebody had communicated and said, our estimate is it's going to be mid-February or whatever.
Yeah. I think the article I read today was like, it was more of like a question, like it's the same question you raised, and then they came up with like, well, here's one scenario, here's another, here's another, but there's been no word. I did have a conversation with another school leader recently where the question came up about whether an employee is required to get vaccinated, and the early indication, like, so to then kind of like continue with school. And the early indication, maybe, and this is with charters only, I'm not sure, was that that seemed to be right. Like that. That it's
okay to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. That it's okay to. I mean, my sense, and I wouldn't make any decisions based on this now. There'd be additional information, but that not only is it okay to ask, but it's okay to require it before.
To tell people to take it. Yeah, I don't know. I think we can check internally what advice we're giving to clients.
Right. So I think with that, I'm not going to talk about forecasts. I'll do that during the SLC component of the meeting. And then jumping over the last page, a couple of updates there. I've talked about the pods being on pause and then us launching them on January 5th, coming back from school. And then a couple of things on the miscellaneous front. Let me see if Jake responded. Oh, shoot. Okay, he'll be about 15 minutes late, he said. So he should be jumping in anytime soon. 15 to 30 minutes late. So a couple of things here. So first, with regard to fundraising, I'm going to send out a letter, as I have in the past, to supporters, just thanking them for their support over a very bizarre year, and then thanking them and encouraging them to give as we close out this year. We raised about $1,600 this year, so it's been really small. That's outside of a campaign that Sal recently put together, where I think, Sal, you may raise $4K, right? And so, and that was, again, grassroots in terms of campaign, but meaningful. So I think the fundraising thus far this year has been modest, and we kind of put that aside as secondary to focus on, first and foremost, what school looks like and the quality of remote programming. At the same time, we want to close out the year in the right way. So I think that's my way of, I love asking you all for money. It's like my favorite thing to do. And so I think it as we've said before, it's not about the amount of the give, but I think what is important is that everyone provides something. I think we can then use that and convey it to others to then spread an interest in giving to our school. And so,
why should we send our checks given the current environment?
If you're sending checks via mail, let me get back to you for certain. Okay. And the other option is just to go through our website and give that way too.
Yeah, but I don't want to get fees taken out, right?
Appreciate that. Yep. Yep. So let me just note that.
Is there a limit on the amount that can be transferred over Venmo? I'm not sure there's a fee for that.
There's no fee for Venmo, that's right.
And I think we have the Unity Prep handle, as long as we know where the money's going, which is, for Facebook, we're still trying to figure out.
But it's a Friends Up, or it's a Unity Venmo?
So PayPal, I guess you would have to do the Friends Up, but I haven't done it recently. The Venmo we've used many times for some of our little like events and stuff, and it seems to have worked fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. In any case, I'll get back to you on it.
I mean, again, it's going to say Friends Of on it. So if it's easier for me to send it to your house, Josh, I'll send it to your house. That's not a problem.
Yep. Yeah. Let me give it a little bit of thought.
Okay.
And like, we've got people in the school. We're just not going to be in school over the break, but returning from break, folks will be there.
Okay.
And then finally, just as a sort of secondary FYI, we had a small grassroots campaign for a neighboring fellow nonprofit in Bed-Stuy over the past 5 days. It's a week-long campaign. The nonprofit is the Campaign Against Hunger. Bed-Stuy, Bourne, has spread throughout the city, doing good work in making sure that people have food and kind of basic things to help them through these times. We raised 2021, our goal, in 4 days. And that came from staff, that came from family members, just chipping away. And so a bit of a success story that I think our school takes pride in. So it's great. And it gave me some ideas about other ways in which we might kind of borrow from what this organization does to kind of raise for specific causes. So I'm excited to engage in that with associate board members soon. Those are the updates for the school leader report. Any questions on things mentioned or not mentioned?
Nope.
All right, back to you, Jim.
Great, thanks. Yeah, let's go straight to the dashboard.
All right, so I'm gonna provide 5 updates on the dashboard today, and they are. We'll start with student enrollment, and so just from the past month to now, I think we're up 2 over the past month, from 530 to 532. So some forward progress. These were backfills, kids coming from another charter, so sibling family coming over. We also had a couple of kids leave, one leave out of state, and then one leaving for another charter school, UGG, that has a music program, UGG. So a little bit of movement over the course of the month, but modest. We're still 4 under our budget, and so obviously not happy with that. We continue to chip away at things and do our darnest to kind of like figure out how to engage families virtually and specifically in our 6th grade. I think the new step for us right now, the newest sort of action is for our families applying to the 7th, 8th, or 10th grade for next year. We're calling them up and saying, hey, we have a seat now for you if you'd like to engage us in it, if you'd like to transfer early. That seat may or may not be available to you in a year. And so we've got a small number, maybe a handful of families that are now weighing that as an option. And so Chris is in contact with them, as is Kalu. So that's the work right now. Any questions on enrollment? All right, I'll move us forward.
All right. Yeah. Have you thought about how you do what's different this year, right? I mean, you used to do some events in person. You can't do that. Like how's it going to work?
Yeah, great question. I think in per that question during the strategic planning role, he's going to share his ideas out today in a short presentation. So we'll go there.
Okay.
Student nutrition wise, just to give a sense, I'm looking at table 3. We're in good form. We're in the green. We've had 9 students sort of depart from October onward. We've backfilled in all those cases and then a bit more. So overall, attrition is in solid form. No concerns there. I'm going to move on to table 6. We're remote. We've had 0 suspensions this year. So just noted, it's kind of an interesting fact. And so there it is. With regard to table 7, student recruitment, we'll discuss that in a little while with Chris. And then finally, I'm going to move over to the last page. You printed this out, or the last page of PDF. And that's table 12, just family participation. Another kind of interesting note, given we're remote. We had family conferences at the middle school last week and had 72% attendance, and that's growing. We're still following up with families who perhaps didn't attend the first time around. So that's beyond our kind of goal. It's beyond what we did last year with families engaging with teachers around kids' progress and support of them. So I think that might be a takeaway for us as we move into in-person as soon as we can and engage in dialogue with families via Zoom. So another resource for us. And then finally, last table, and we haven't looked at this data at all this year as of yet. I usually provide an update at about this point in the year. And so looking at kind of SPED compliance updates. So there are 3 measures that we typically use from a compliance end of things, say, are we meeting the mark for students with disabilities? And so we look at our IEPs up to date, what percentage are up to date, our IEPs and the services in them being fully provided or partially provided. The reason between partial versus full typically has to do with like what we offer as a school versus what's on a student's IEP and whether we offer that or not, and then do our darnest to provide it the best way we can. So the good news is that like in all cases, and we've used these measures in the past, they're in good form. They're all in the green and in line with like the targets we've had in the past and have again this year. We've got some 9th grade students who have IEPs that are new to our school this year. And so what typically happens in the first few months of school is we look at their IEPs, which are based on their 8th grade schedules and what their school in 8th grade was offering, and then say how does their IEP and their needs align with what services we offer, our hours of instruction, et cetera, and then make amendments to it. And so the reason for the slightly lower rate for fully met students with IEPs in this table is just due to that reconciling that has to go on. When that happens and those IEP meetings are set with the then that percentage will go up. Are there any other questions on dashboard updates for this month? Excellent.
Okay, strategic planning.
All right. So what we're going to do today, this came at the suggestion of I'm going to get Leslie in here, who's coming in now. At the suggestion of Marion last month, who said, hey, recruitment's got to look different this year. Can you give us a sense of how it's going to be different and then how you guys are adjusting strategically to continue to engage prospective families in our school? So Chris is going to talk a bit about that today. Chris, you've got host privileges, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
Do you want me to go, or to respect Leslie's time that she just got here? You want me to do AFC?
Why don't we're right in on it? Why don't we have Leslie go just after this, if that's okay? Hey, Leslie.
Hey.
Cool. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Can you guys all see it? Great. So tonight I'm going to be going over our plan for student recruitment for the 2020-21 school year. Just recognizing that student recruitment is a key priority for financial compliance, governance, and school operations. Talking primarily this evening about 6th grade and 9th grade as our critical intake grades. Going over our agenda and our guiding question for the evening. Looking back on 2019-20 student recruitment, we'll start off with that. Then we'll move forward with 21-22 student recruitment, anticipated challenges, 21-22 student recruitment work plan, new initiatives, and ideas. And the guiding question for this evening, do we believe this plan, I'm asking you guys, do we believe this plan seems sufficient for student recruitment strategy during a pandemic?
Yeah. I think the other question there is, what ideas do you have? What can you give to Chris and team if they come up?
Yeah, feel free to ask questions during the presentation. Looking back on 2019-20 recruitment, grades 7 to 12, we fulfilled 98% of the target enrollment. By the 2020 lottery earlier this year, 278 applications for 9th grade were received for 45 seats. Grade 7 currently has a wait list of 40 students. We're completely at capacity in grade 7, and we do have a wait list right now. Rising 6th graders from 4 elementary schools participated in engaging daytime field trips to Unity Middle School. This happened right before the pandemic shutdown. New partnerships were formed with nearby elementary schools, including Brooklyn Charter School, which is a charter elementary school about a half mile from Unity. Some shortfalls from recruitment this past year. 6th grade fell short of overall applications received. 242 were received as of the beginning of April 2020 for the lottery, compared to a goal which we had set of 300. And 6th grade current enrollment, which we're at 72 right now, fell short of both our target, 94, and what we have budgeted, 87. Looking back on, this is self-answered question on the application for 6th graders. So this is how families reported, 6th grade families that applied, how they heard about Unity. Just wanted to give you guys some insight. 31% was, unfortunately, the biggest chunk. It was other unknown. They didn't answer the question. But one of the biggest ones is fairs, 23%. That's a big in-person engagement that unfortunately is not going to be happening this year. 16% word of mouth. 15% internet search, browsing, looking for charter schools. 13% through our direct social media approach. And then 2% through mailing or just handing out brochures.
There's no virtual fairs, Chris?
They're not announced yet. They're in the process of making them happen right now, and that the virtual fair that they are putting on is being put on by the not-for-profit Charter School Center. I'm a little concerned just because the Charter School Center fair I went to a few years ago was very poorly attended. The Department of Ed has not announced any fairs yet. none virtual ones. So the only one I've heard about after a lot of research is the one the Charter School Center put on, which we're definitely attending. But I'm concerned because a few years ago I did go to that one and the parent attendance was very low.
Hey, Chris, in the other segment there, do you have any insight on what you think it might be? Do you think it's a mix of the other ones? Is it people just being, is it some other things that aren't on that list?
I think it's a mix. I truly think it's a mix. I think so, I'm hoping some of it was more word of mouth. So I truly think it's a mix of the other items. So looking forward to 21-22 student recruitment. Some anticipated challenges. We're in a pandemic, so we are inability to visit elementary schools. In the past, we visited elementary schools, met with 5th grade counselors. I've presented myself. Kalu's presented directly to 5th grade classes, got kids excited about Unity. It was an incredible experience. Inability to host potential applicants and families. In the past, we've had field trips. Full 5th grades, Brooklyn Charter School, other charter schools nearby have come over to Unity and experience what it's like to be a Unity middle schooler for a day, which was really powerful. NYC DOE student enrollment overall is down 3.4% in 1 year from 2019 to 2020. This is a similar size drop in enrollment over a dozen years from 2006 to 2008. So students were leaving New York City Department of Ed public schools. In recent years, 5 additional charter schools nearby expanded to include 6th grade, or new charter schools opened serving 6th graders nearby. So there are more charter schools in our neighborhood that are serving 6th grade than ever before. And then just there's no in-person fairs, that should say, this year during a pandemic. They just announced the virtual fair about 3 days ago. And just as a reminder, last year 63 applicants had come directly from fairs, so it's 23% of the overall applicant pool for 6th grade last year. So it's a significant chunk. So looking forward to what we are doing this year for student recruitment. This is a continued recruitment work from prior years. We set weekly targets for 6th grade applications, 9th grade applications, and then also targets for Unity 8th graders enrolling in Unity High School. We have twice weekly check-ins with the recruitment team and school leadership from both sites. Partnerships with feeder elementary schools, really trying to develop a pipeline between local elementary schools nearby, both public, charter, and private, and Unity. We always have an active social media promotion, advertisements on Facebook and Instagram. We have a direct-to-message, so if somebody clicks on one of our promotions, either myself or my coworker get an immediate message, and we respond in that moment. So it's a really quick way for us to respond to any questions and to continue to build our brand and network. Ease of access through a digital application. Anybody can apply online right now from the comfort and safety of their home. We do direct-to-family emails and text messaging. The scoop that we put out to Unity families also goes out to our applicants. So just continue to build up our brand and keep Unity in the forefront of all of our applicants' minds. And then we are participating in the citywide charter school common application. So similar to colleges, there's a common application that allows families to check off any charter school they want to apply to and do it within one application. Some new initiatives that we are doing this year that we didn't do in the past. We are going to have an engaging yet a candid phone call with each applicant within 3 days of the applicant submission. So this is already being done. And then on that phone call, we're being really clear and transparent. Hey, do you know you want to send your child to Unity, or are you still shopping around for other schools? Just so we can better gauge where these applicants are in the pipeline from applicant to enrollee to student on the first day of school. Based on how this conversation goes, they're going to be tagged either red, yellow, or green. Red means they're not very interested in Unity. After multiple calls, emails, texts, we can't get anybody on the phone. They're an absent application. We're going to continue outreach, but they're in the red. Yellow means they're answering. We've had a conversation or two. They might be interested in Unity, but they answered that question that they're still considering their options. They're shopping around for other schools. So yellow applicants should receive a follow-up call from a co-principal. We're setting up follow-up calls from current Unity parents, connecting the students directly to the students. So more intensive approach for these yellow tagged scholars to bring them over to green. Green is if they say, hey, I know I want to send my student to Unity. I'm so excited for Unity. number one pick, and so those are our green tagged applicants. So that more.
Chris, is it clear to people that the way they answer has no bearing on their chances of getting in, and it's lottery only? I just don't want the results to get skewed if people think they've got to tell you one thing rather than answering honestly.
No, the way, so I did very similar phone calls with my ninth graders, the eighth graders who were coming from other schools, and the parents were really open and engaging with these conversations. They were even more so than I expected. They were really open about having this conversation. If they mentioned they were shopping around for schools, hey, tell me more about why you're shopping around for schools. What are you looking for in a school? What are you looking for? And then it turns into an even deeper conversation about what Unity could offer their scholars. And I think it was really powerful happening this year in that it led to a more accurate forecast of enrollment by late summer, whereas we saw some significant sixth grade drop-off between July, August, September. We didn't see that level of drop-off in the ninth grade, and I attribute a lot to these phone calls that we had. The enrollees that we had for high school for ninth grade were really excited about Unity, whereas those for Unity Middle still had multiple applications and multiple enrollment packets they were filling out with other schools at the same time. We're also doing a weekly data review of sixth grade and ninth grade applications with each of these color tags. So now we're not saying, oh, how many applications for sixth grade do we have? How many green applications? How many yellow applications? What are our next steps for these yellows? How do we get these yellows into the green? So we have very targeted follow-up approaches with each of these different buckets tagged students. We also we're doing additional breakdown of student recruitment tasks with targeted follow-up dates, just very clear dates, deadlines, deliverables for each student recruitment task. We are doing a flyer mailing to every sixth grader, rising sixth grader, within 3 miles of 432 Monroe Street. We are development of a unique Guardians caregiver recruitment team, so that 16% from the earlier slide that was showing how do you hear about Unity, word of mouth. I've heard from other schools and other groups that word of mouth is so powerful. So we're using caregiver testimonials at our virtual open houses. We're going to try to help out with some of our current Unity caregivers, calling potential new caregivers. We are safety permitted one-on-one building tours immediately before and after the lottery. Just something special, even though school might be virtual only. Hey, we're going to go out of our way to show you around the building. It might be an empty building, but it's still something more that other schools might be doing. Just continuing to develop our school brand, increasing social media engagement. I think our Instagram followers went up 25% in the past few weeks. We're trying to build up our Instagram, our Facebook, our Twitter account, our social media presence, especially that we're all online learning now. Some additional ideas being explored. We're not confirmed with them yet. We are exploring the idea of an accepted Unity letter mailed to every sixth grader within 3 miles of 432 Monroe, whether or not they applied. So some sort of like a pre-approval letter, toying around with that idea right now. Unity branded Chromebook sleeve and a welcome letter.
Can I jump up on this one? How can you do that if you haven't had your lottery yet?
That's what I'm exploring. That's why it's not
Okay.
definite yet. It's thinking about what the wording could be. That's still making sure we're completely legal in compliance, but also getting them excited about by being a graduate of the school, you have a spot to Unity. Still trying to figure out exactly how that could look, if at all even possible. Unity branded Chromebook sleeve and a welcome letter mailed to every fifth grader at charter, feeder, and elementary schools. Maybe along with the letter, hey, this is where your Unity Chromebook is going to go next year. We're so excited to have you at our school. So it's like an empty Chromebook sleeve. Every student at Unity is guaranteed a Chromebook to help with their learning. You save this for next year. This is where your Chromebook will go. And then participation at existing virtual events at elementary feeder schools. A few days ago, I actually spoke at a Brooklyn Scholars, which is another middle school in South Brooklyn, and I spoke with their eighth graders moving up to high school next year, got them all super excited about Unity High. So pushing for more events like that, jumping in at virtual PTA meetings at elementary schools, jumping in at conferences at elementary schools, trying to get every opportunity possible to connect with fifth grade students, fifth grade parents, and fifth grade counselors.
Hey, Chris, what specifically are you guys doing for developing the school brand and social media engagement and?
Yeah, Purdue, that's a great question. So we are building, we're doing staff competitions. So the best digital content submission every week. So now it's just a part of our staff meeting. So we are encouraging everything from showcasing academic results, showcasing student of the month, having students send in fun videos. So both showcasing both our academic and non-academic successes within our Instagram, our Facebook, and our Twitter account. I'm actually reading a really cool book right now called Branded that's all about digital marketing for schools in the 21st century, and it's well written. So
I have a few ideas and a few questions.
Yeah, definitely. So go.
And sort of my guiding principle is wherever we have something that we think used to work in the in-person environment, we should try to replicate it as best we can in the environment we're in right now. And, obviously we can also come up with new things, but you mentioned that there were schools previously that were doing field trips to Unity. And that brings two ideas to me. The first one is, could you do a video of somebody taking a field trip and visiting the building and doing a sort of the best replication that you could of that experience if somebody's not able to take it in person and have, I've seen this because, we were applying to silly preschools for 3-year-olds, but where they have like some students walk the halls and say, this is like whatever. I mean, there's many ways to do it, and I'm sure there's a lot of savvy people who can do this well. But I think a student's view through what is it like to be here and to attend school and whatever, and it's going to have to, I think, be a mix of like, this is what the school is like in person, and this is what we do when we're remote, which both of which are going to be relevant. One part of it. The second part of it is if the school was willing to send the kids to you for a 2-hour field trip, then presumably they're willing to give you 20 minutes at some point in their remote learning schedule where there can be a presentation that, not everybody has to attend, but, that is somehow within the school day, and that the parents can join. So maybe it's at the end of the school day or something, I don't know, but if you could cooperate with the schools in having a slot, right, not just access by sending them a letter, but having something that's kind of within the structured day that they can choose to attend, I think might be helpful. I was going to ask about open house in person if people like to do that, which I heard that you were doing that, so I think it's helpful. And then, those are the main things, but I think that the other aspect, right, that you don't really touch on, but I think that goes to a bit of Sal's question, is sort of how are you marketing yourself differently now that you're in this environment, right? You're now in an environment of having taught amid a pandemic for 9 months and done things in a certain way that you think have been successful, and sort of how do you convey that to people, right? What's your collateral or whatever they call it? Like, how is this embodied? How do people learn that you have these two great sites, but also you have, a proven ability to teach remotely, and that you do these pods for people who'd rather be in person? And so how's that new image getting developed and conveyed to the people who would need to hear it? And then I think my last point, I'm going to stop because I've said way too much, is that I'm not a huge fan of sending stuff to people who have expressed no interest, just because I just think it's wasteful on some level, especially if it's something that not all of them are going to be able to use. But I'm happy to defer to you guys. I like the idea of giving people something that they're going to see and that's going to remind them of you. I just want to make sure they don't get another piece of branded stuff that goes somewhere and just gathers dust.
I definitely appreciate all that feedback, and I'm taking notes for all that. Thank you.
I can just add two things. First of all, I hadn't thought of the swag. I'm with Mario, and we had a campaign in my company where we sent, I think, to 200 people, we sent them these branded Yeti cups. And my partner thought this is going to be awesome. We got literally zero replies. So there's a lot of brain trace Yeti cups.
If you have any extras, I'll take one. I'll take one, Jim, if you have any.
Yeah, I've got a box up here. I'll bring it to the next live meeting. The other thing, and Marlon's right. I mean, we're all living in the same. We all face the same challenge in business and in the nonprofit world, etc. Of rethinking how we do this. We went back and we dug deep into our numbers, and over the prior 2 years, more than half of our new clients came from conferences, which don't exist anymore. So we started, I guess this goes back to February, March, when we saw what was going on. We have our web, not maybe be thinking of, but 5-minute bursts of video.
Yeah, no, he froze.
From
what seemed like a most important point. Jim, you froze, so rewind for a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, yeah, my internet's horrible. I don't know. But what we found that works with these webinars, not like the 1 hour thing, interview things, but little 5-minute bursts from like a faculty member. We use our team at the company, and it's not required, but everybody likes getting involved. One person talking for 5 minutes, short video on a topic that interests them. Nothing to do with pitching the company, nothing to do with asking for money, nothing to do with, recruitment, but interesting, something that a parent might find interesting. How do I teach English over Zoom? Screenshot of the Zoom. Here's how I do it. Blah, 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 blah. Kick it off. Those things kind of get viral, and it's a great way to generate the word of mouth. I don't know what that looks like in the school context, but that's been the number one way. Email campaigns are okay. We've had a few leads from that, but those have been very successful. These just, again, keep it short, 5 minutes. Ask teachers to volunteer to do their own, some topic they're interested in, some topic that a parent might be worried about that they could address, and just blast those out, link to the website, et cetera, et cetera.
Josh, this is Earl. I don't know. Josh kind of knows what I do for a living. So I am now the executive vice president for Salesforce. We sell stuff online every day. So understanding behaviors is really based off of what are the 5 or 10 consistent challenges that parents are faced in this audience. And that's what you put online that we know how to fix. So we've actually dealt with these top 10 issues on remote learning for this age bracket. Similar to what's saying, you create short vignettes, 1 to 3 minutes, and you speak specifically to those parents who are addressing issues within that audience, and immediately you're going to get people tracking it. If you put it out on social media, the moment someone sees it, they're going to share it with 2 or 3 other parents that are dealing with the same things. That builds your brand because you're listening and or understand the 5 or 10 challenges that all kids 9 through 12 that are going through, and we're actually solving these problems. Your testimonials need to come from either the parents or the children. If they come from the teachers, the teachers work for us, so they're almost like salespersons. But if they're coming from the kids, that's your audience.
That's good.
Just put it out on social media, and you will immediately start getting traction. And then it's a push, not a pull. People will start coming to you.
So I think, this has been great. I think Chris has some good ideas. It's been great to kind of hear just new ideas being generated. We sit together quite a bit and talk about things that we think are really innovative, but maybe we talked about them the prior week, and so things can get stale. So good to get some feedback from team today. I think even in seeing this, and I'm kind of like in the weeds, like a couple of things come to mind. One, like this is competitive. It's pretty hard work. And like we're not just, there's like school and like math and ELA and history and science. And then there's all this stuff to like make the school happen too. So it's a lot. And then I think, I appreciate just in seeing Chris kind of talk about what he does and what his team does. There's a certain fire there. So I appreciate Chris's kind of like dig and and good sort of like fight with this work, which can be draining. So thank you, Chris.
Nice.
What I put forth, Jim, is just to honor Leslie's time tonight. Leslie, thank you for being on deck for some time. Maybe we jump right to AFC to start and just change the order of the committee report outs.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to give my 5-minute blurb, on how we're doing financially and what has changed from last month to this month and where we're seeing the most differences in our budget, is that net income is expected to be at $84,250 versus a budget of $193,752. So currently, right now, we're doing worse than budget by $109,502. To go to the top of the P&L and talk about our revenues and where we are. Revenues are projected to be roughly $21,000 higher than budget. There is no change from what we projected last month, so therefore the per pupil is still at the same. It's projected to be down by $152,000, and that's because the gen ed enrollment, we're down 6 students from budget on the gen ed side, and we're down roughly 19 students on the SPED side. FAMIS is still the same, projected to be down by $1,300. Title the same, up by $8,900. We're still including the ESSER CARES grant, and all other revenues are expected to be on budget. Any questions on revenue? Okay, to move on down to expenses. Full year expenses are projected to be higher than budget by $130,000. And just keep in mind that even though we have the ESSER CARES grant of $165,000, that's a reimbursable grant. And so we have those related expenses that were not included in our budget. So that's why it's partially higher. Our budget is higher by $130,000. Compensation, we're slightly higher by $78,000, and that's because we have some stipends in there for the ESSER grant, as I mentioned before. We have some incentives, maternity leave benefits that we've mentioned over the past couple of months of roughly $3,600. Our general administration, where the webcams and tripods, this has grown from last month to this month by roughly $2,500, and that's because we're seeing a lot of uptick in postage of various items to students. So what we decided between Josh and Chris is that what would happen is that as we see certain expenses go up that are being used for COVID or remote learning or anything like that, we're kind of like moving around the expenses that we previously had budgeted for our ESSER CARES grant. And we're allowed to do that because sometime during the year, the state is going to allow us to amend the original expenses that we had to budget and move those expenses around so that they fit more in line to what is happening during the school year. So this is one case where we're now going to provide, things like postage now to the ESSER grant, to the ESSER CARES, and we may take those expenses away from another category. Moving on to facility operations and maintenance, we're mostly higher or over budget in that areas because we factored in a lot of dollars for PPE. Because we really haven't been in the school, we should probably see some savings there, and that would probably be one of the categories that may be reduced to take on some of these other additional expenses that are going up because of the additional spending for webcams, tripods, and things like that. Technology expense, there's been a lot of database programs and licenses and things like that for the students. And as you see that is a different variance or a higher number in expenses from last month. So that's showing a negative variance, negative meaning a higher amount of expenses of roughly about $15,000. And we're going to look to cover a portion of that with the CARES grant as well. Miscellaneous expense in regards to the PPP loan and interest. Originally, that interest was only 6 months. That has now been moved out to 7 months into January. I think one of the things that we should start to think about is if we're going to start to move with the process or with forgiveness, or if we're actually going to return those funds back to the government. And with that, all of the other expenses right now are on budget. Because we're only 4 months within the school year, probably around the month of January or so, we'll start to look at those areas where the accounts are showing significant savings. And those, and when I say savings, where we're not spending as much due to the remote learning. And that might be things with assemblies or some of the activities, sports and things like that that are not happening in the school right now. We should start to see a positive effect to our bottom line because of those various categories.
But Leslie, is it fair to say that most of the change in net income is really due to enrollment, because the extra revenue, the extra expenses are largely covered by this grant that we hadn't budgeted for?
Yes,
And
you
so
are right.
what that leaves is really fewer kids than we thought we were going to have. Right?
Yep, and you're right. And you see that, Marion, in our revenues, because revenues are only projected to be higher by $20,000, right? If we would have had all the students or the higher enrollment, whether it's in the SPED or the Gen Ed, we would be showing a significant amount of being over budget in our revenue category, and we're not.
And just on the facilities,
Mhm.
I think you said you would expect us to be sort of under budget on the facilities, but we're showing, I guess I missed what you said there. It sounded like we're over budget, but we were expecting to be under budget, or?
Right, we're over budget in facilities because we factored in like masks, PPE, extra cleaning, and things like that if we were going to be in the school.
Got it. But
that was going to be covered with CARES.
But you're saying that that's not offset by like saving on utilities and cleaning, and like I assume normally we've got like a janitor in the school, or I don't know. Are we still?
Yeah,
You know.
I think that goes to like the point I was going to make, which was Leslie's last point. Like, we haven't begun to factor in some of that cost savings. This budget was devised for like an in-person full time over the course of the year. Now that we're doing things differently, I imagine there'll be some cost savings that we just haven't like plucked out as of yet, which we'll do later on this spring. I can say that like over the 4 months that we were remote last year, there was about $250,000 in cost savings. And so we're roughly around the same time frame now, but I imagine there'll be some cost savings. I don't know the extent.
But why aren't we seeing them in the numbers yet?
Like, why didn't we save them in the fall?
Yeah.
I think if I don't know that it's there. If we believe, from my vantage point, again, you guys are the experts here with regard to doing this much more than I do. There's still unknown out there, so we could go through the exercise of like carving out some savings that seem to appear on a monthly level, but it's possible we might have to go back in time in the spring just based on the programming and stuff, and maybe do that again. And so I guess it's a question of whether we feel like that is a worthy.
I don't think we're saying you should amend the budget going forward. I think we're saying, why aren't expenses to date less than what we thought they would be if what we thought they would be was based on being in the building full time?
Well, they are. Like, if we look at the numbers on a year-to-date basis, as of October year-to-date, expense-wise, we're roughly $75,000 under budget.
Got it. So you're saying our actuals do vary below budget.
Yes.
But right now you're just pushing that savings through to the back half of the year, whereas most likely they'll be either neutral or similar savings, and then so we'll end up with a bigger variance at the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Marianne?
Let's give it another month or two, because I'm not sure I fully understand, but I also don't think there's any decision to be made today based on it.
Okay.
Has all the equipment, filters, whatever, I don't know what we're doing for these pods, been purchased and reflected here?
When you say pods,
The Panther pod, or whatever, Josh, what are they?
So some of the in-person stuff that we might do. So like, for example, like some kind of air filter and that kind of thing. And so as they're purchased, they are reflected, Jim. And so, I mean, there's
And are they reimbursed?
and they could be if we decide that we want to include that as a part of our reimbursement costs. Yes, through the grant that Leslie mentioned earlier.
Well,
right now, that's the assumption we're operating under.
Okay, but to be clear, we're going to ask for them to be reimbursed, right? To the extent we buy that type of equipment.
Yes. So if it's just a question of if we've got $100,000 for this sort of restricted grant from the state, and we end up having to spend $110,000, we'll apply for all of the reimbursement that we can get, and then there may be some additional costs. Like, I don't know that the filters will be a part of that. I think they will be, but it's possible that we decide that there are other costs that we want to include in the grant instead.
Well, I think we talked about this last month. I think you need to track all of this as one bucket of stuff that we would not have spent money on had it not been for COVID, because we have a couple places to go to get the reimbursement. One is the PPP loan, right? So I think you need to sort of look at how we're doing business differently this year. What are the additional costs we've incurred? Let's track those, all of them. And then we'll figure out where the money comes from.
Okay, what I can do, Jim, is that I've been trying to track some of these expenses that are going against the ESSER CARES grant, right? And I can provide like a report that kind of like gives a profit and loss by class that'll actually say like these are the expenses that are being tagged, for less of a better word, under the ESSER CARES grant, right? Because we had some computers that have been tagged under the ESSER CARES. That was going to be pretty much a big chunk of what the dollars that were going to be used. So then that'll give us some idea of how much is left over, or let's say is available to be used that hasn't been tagged or allocated already. If that'll be helpful.
So just so I'm clear, we tag things. Have we actually been reimbursed for any things we've tagged already?
No.
And when do we know if and when we get the reimbursement?
Well, what's supposed to happen is that usually the state gives us, like on these type of reimbursable grants, you get 20% of the amount that they've allocated to you sometime in October and November. And unfortunately, we haven't seen those dollars yet. So I'm under the assumption that there's probably some sort of delay, because we also haven't seen those reimbursements for some of the other reimbursable grants.
Okay, all the more need to track all of these costs, because I don't think Albany's having a good couple months here. So let's track all the costs. If it turns
I think we may have
if
lost
it doesn't
Jim.
come in, are those costs separated?
We lost you for a second,
Sorry.
Jim.
Sorry, yeah, but if the money comes in, terrific. We'll get reimbursed. If the money doesn't come in from the state, fine. We have those costs identified, supportable, et cetera, reasonable, and we have other ways to get the cost paid for. But let's track them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to be clear, Leslie, let's track everything that's COVID related, whether or not it's eligible for that grant.
Okay. Whether it's eligible for the grant or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If we would not have done it but for COVID, buying all the computers, anything like that, let's track it separately.
So should we include certain things like, let's say, Chris and Josh might know better about this, like let's say certain programs that might not have been purchased, because that would fall under that also. There's also a lot of reimbursement to students for hotspots. Of course, we would include things like that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Will do.
Great. Anything else on the finance front?
I just want to talk about cash flow real fast. So cash on hand as of 10/31 is $4.7 million. I just want to say that includes the force per pupil the third per pupil invoice, which is why that amount looks so high. And let's also remember that that also includes the PPP loan. So cash on hand without the PPP CARES loan is roughly $3.2 million. So it either represents 142 days of cash on hand. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys are seeing the wrong screen. I started. Sorry. So cash on hand represents either 142 days of cash on hand without the PPP CARES loan or 95 days of cash on hand without the loan. We're projected to carry over about $2.8 million for next year. If we keep the loan, 1.3 without the loan. Cash on hand at FOMB as of 12/9 is $1,049,254, and that includes a payment of real estate cash of about $50,000 that was paid in November. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a good night now.
You too.
Thank you.
Oops.
Okay, who wants to go next? Let's see. Come back to the
We'll just go.
TFC.
Yeah. And I think just there, we talked about development already. I made my pitch. So you guys are all ready to give a bit before the December closeout. And on the facilities front, I deferred it to Jake on whether there's any updates worthy of full board discussion. We'll also have a bit of executive discussion after this meeting if we want to talk then.
I think probably next month there will be more to talk about.
Cool. All right. So no noteworthy elements facility-wise to bring the board this month. Next up, ECPC.
Josh, I think the one important point there, I think that the rest of the board should know about is that it sounds to me like, and Jake, you could speak to it more. It sounds like they're going to want to sell regardless of whether we want to purchase the building or not, ultimately, is the impression I'm getting based off of today's conversation. So I think, that'll inform perhaps our decision ultimately, but I think that's an important piece for us all to know.
And by the way, Sal and Jim, I emailed a few things after our calls today, but for some reason, everything I sent to Gmail today is bouncing back. So you may or may not get them.
No, I got it. Google had a bad day or two. Yeah, that was Google's fault.
Yeah. Same.
Anyway, so
I got it. Okay, should we move on? ECPC.
Yeah, I think the big and Sal, chime in if you think there's something more. But I think much of our discussion focused on ways of engaging the associate board in a few different opportunities, and so I've got a call set up with two members of the associate board tomorrow. So that's maybe the one element to report out on, and we'll report back more in January. Sal, anything else worth reporting out for ECPC stuff?
No, I think that's it.
Cool.
Sorry, SLC, please.
I'll say I'll spend 3 minutes unless there are questions and people want to talk more about I'm going back to the school year report, and I'm looking at page 4 where there's a breakdown or summary of graduation forecasts for the class of 2021 or entry cohort of 2017. So I think just the big headlines here are that, again, college counseling is happening online 100% of the time right now. So it's a very different kind of scene with regard to connection, interaction. And so I think it's worked out fairly well, but it's just different. In terms of forecasts right now, the table there shows on page 4 that our forecasts are not dissimilar from last year. We're looking at a graduation rate of 90% to 95% based on where kids are now with regard to credit and passes on the Regents exams. there are some unknowns with regard to how Regents exams come into play. Right now, they're not taking place in January. They're slated to take place in June. If they don't take place in June, kids' requirements may be waived. That will influence graduation across the state in some way, et cetera. It influenced us slightly. We had 3 students who didn't have to pass an exam last year, got the waiver, and then were able to graduate. But it didn't impact things widely at our school. So same general scene with regard to kids who are on track or approaching. Last year, we didn't quite know what approaching meant. We hadn't done this before. This year, or last year, through our experience, all of those students who were designated as approaching graduation requirements, in fact, did graduate in June. So we feel more confident in our ability to sort of deliver on that. And so we're placing them in the green, so to speak, as of now. We do have some students who are off track, just as we did last year, and the work is really about like just blood, sweat, and tears, supporting kids every step of the way, and checking in on them, checking in with families, and it's just like additional support on the daily. So that's happening with our academic counselors for the most part, as well as within grade level teams in our 12th grade level team in particular. We have a couple of kids who aren't going to graduate as of June, may have a chance in August. With those students, at least 2 of those students, there's a possibility of them moving on to a school that offers expedited credit recovery. We don't offer that right now, and so this may be a good option for them. And so that's conversation that goes on with our academic counselors, families, and student about best path forward. Got one student who officially has dropped out, and that student is now in Virginia, owns a home, and looking to move to LA. And so is doing okay with regard to shaking and moving and thinking about real estate. Doesn't have his diploma, but his time will come. And he's a pretty impressive kid in a lot of ways, so I think he'll be all right. But that would be our first kid who hasn't graduated from our school, who isn't looking right now to move on to a route, whether it be a GED or a transfer school or something else. So overall, I think things are looking good, and we continue with the good work, particularly in supporting our students who are off track or who are approaching and need just close monitoring and guidance. Any questions on forecasts coming from team? I think beyond that, there's the other discussion with SLC was a bit about sort of charter revisions, which we can talk about perhaps in the executive session shortly. But that's the summary from SLC, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. Associate board. Anything there? Board. Okay. If my internet decides to work, I will turn my video on. Sorry about this. My Time Warner cable's not. Okay, so the first item is the minutes from the prior meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments on those? Sorry, I got a 2-year-old in the background. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Minutes are approved. And then, Josh, maybe you want to speak a little bit about this. I think pretty much everybody had a chance to speak to or hear from Madonna. And is this our typical proposal to move forward, Josh? Is that where we are with her?
I think we're good there at this point in time. And so I think next item is really honoring kind of Ken's good work. And so I think as I mentioned last month, Ken has kind of been thinking about moving on to the next sort of thing and focusing on some things at home and with his business, and so has decided to sort of step off the board this season. And so we're here tonight to just sort of thank him for everything he's done for our school, which is a lot. When I think of Ken, all the work that we've done together, it's been 8 years since the school opened. You've seen the school from inside out, beginning to end, so you kind of seen it all. I appreciate so much about what you've done for the school and for me and for this board. When I think about maybe the things that matter most. I could run down a list of the things that like you've done and contributed, but I think what comes to mind first and foremost are some of the values that you've championed for us as a school that I think have only been solidified through your consistent care and good work and challenge with both this board, with me, and with the school. And so one of the values that I care more deeply as a result of working with you is just around like doing education in the right way and doing that with like all kids fully in mind, the highest sense of their potential, and loving them for it, and like digging into the work with like their success, their fulfillment in mind, like deeply. And so I think we've always been a school that has sort of like thought that and said it and believed it, but I think you've not just preserved it at our school, I think you've celebrated it, and I think it's carried over. So when we think about who we are as a school, as we kind of create and solidify our identity, that's something that we take pride in, like just doing education in the right way, which is often the hard way, but the right way. The other value that I kind of like identify here as I thought about this just before the meeting is just this idea of like high expectations, high support. And that's also been with us as a school since the very beginning, but we've tended to maybe pinpoint it or apply it to kids and not adults so much. And so I think over the past 4 years in which we've worked together pretty closely on this board, like your push, your high expectations of like, this is your job, you're going to do it well, and we're going to make sure that happens. And then this on the encouragement front, on the high expectations front, we're going to help you as whatever you need to kind of make that happen. And I think sort of like your mentorship of me in that work, and then your sort of nudging of me to do that with my team has taken hold. And as a result of that, we do the work better on behalf of kids than we've ever done. And it's sort of in like who we are as a team and who we are as an institution. And that lives on beyond kind of like the people. And so that's profound. And I think it means really good things for our school with kids. So I thank you for like drilling down on those values. And to me, that's the way in which you've impacted our school most.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, you look back at where we were a couple of years ago, Ken, before you got involved. And I think all of us contribute in different ways, but in terms of performance in the classroom, demanding performance from the educators, showing the educators what that looks like, all that sort of stuff in the classroom. I think a lot of us are really good outside the classroom, but, gets to the classroom, it's not our world. You made a huge impact there. We were so different from where we were before you got involved. So, thank you so much for that. Done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of panicked right now. I'm wondering how we're going to do it all when you're gone. But Josh has had a history of finding good people. I felt the same way when Carol had left, and so I'm sure we'll do fine. But it's always daunting because there's just a lot of stuff I feel like I didn't understand until I heard you talk about them.
This is true.
I think I learned more from one SLC call with you, Ken, than I do in like a week of any other activity related to the school.
Ken, you might get some calls from us here and there anyway.
I agree. I'm grateful for a lot that I've learned from Ken about educating in a very short time. Short time meeting him together. Not that Ken's service to Unity has been anything but.
Well, again, thanks, Ken. You're part of the family now, so you can expect us to involve you somehow going forward. So, but thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay.
You're on mute.
Final word, Ken. Anything you want to share out?
Yeah, thank you for those incredibly kind words. That meant a lot and really wonderful. I just want to thank you all for letting me have the honor and privilege of serving on this board. And Josh, you mentioned some of the offline work we've done, which got very, very intense. And it was quite a pleasure to be able to lean in, throttle down, and and engage with you and have each time you come back, fully engaged. And as a leader, it's a wonderful thing. So thank you for all the work we've done together. And thank this board, the people. I've learned so much from so many things I don't know about this business very well, the law, the real estate, and just the conversations, the way the people on this board, my colleagues here, approach this work with just incredible fiduciary responsibility and the caring and the attentiveness. It's astonishing. And I'm honored to have been associated and to continue to say I was a board member of this organization. I look forward to seeing the school move onward and upward, its current trajectory, which is that way. It'll be exciting to see the milestones and achievements reached. So thank you all for teaching me about a lot of things. And I very much enjoyed my time here, and I hope that we can cross paths again in some capacity, in some way.
To that end, know that you know where we'll be at 7 o'clock Tuesday of the month, and where we'll be the last Wednesday of the month at 4:45. I'm sure you have that code to our phone kind of memorized. 684-0110.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ken. Really, really great work. Okay. Public comment. Okay, so we'll move on. Last thoughts. I'll just let you go. I have a maniac in the background here. So. Josh, any last thoughts from you? While I take care of a little problem.
I guess no. I think just appreciation to this team. I think over the past 9 months now, we've been doing some stuff very differently than maybe what we've done in the past, and I appreciate the supportive team and in making the best decisions that we can, given the information we have in any given month. So I look forward to hopefully more predictable times in the coming year, and being able to kind of get back to business as usual as soon as can be.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And with that, we'll end the meeting. Chris, you want to turn off the recording? And does anybody want to take a break for a little bit before we move into executive, or are we good to keep going?